On Monday, the Supreme Court stunned Washington by announcing it's adopting a new code of conduct. The move comes amid growing criticism following several press reports that some justices were accepting gifts and luxury trips from wealthy, politically aligned individuals. That led critics to allege at least some of the justices could be bought off for favorable decisions. CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford joins us now, someone who tracks the High Court quite closely. This did surprise Washington a bit, but we knew it had been in the works to some extent. What is in this? What isn't in this?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of one of these things where it was surprising that it came out on Monday. Yeah, but it's been in the works for years and years. I mean, the justices have taught for years, long before any of these media reports, recent media reports, particularly about Justice Thomas, were ever in the works. But it took some time to kind of come together on what the court was going to do. You've got to get buy-in from all 9 justices. Some of them have different views on things. But this is what they came up with. And I think what's really most notable about it is that it very closely tracks what they followed as federal appeals court judges. It's almost verbatim in parts to what all lower federal court judges, the code of conduct and ethical guidelines and rules that they have to follow. The court said in a statement, again signed onto by all 9 justices, that they've kind of always followed that informal code and kind of tracked that they do. But this was just making it official because they thought that was important because there had been a misunderstanding, as they put it, that the justices weren't bound by any ethical rules. And they say, but of course they always were. So here you go. You wanted a code of conduct, official one from the Supreme Court. And that's what they've delivered. And
it essentially lays out when you can recuse yourself from a case, although it urges you not to do that, right?
Right, and that's there's some differences to what the lower court judges have to follow. There are more specific guidelines, as you point out, on recusal. There's some distinctions there because that goes to the unique nature of the Supreme Court. If one justice has to recuse from a case, that leaves 8. And what's the problem there, right? You can get a 4-4 tie.
Right.
So there's, maybe more incentive for Supreme Court justices not to recuse in cases unless it's a clear and obvious conflict. There's other specific guidelines, for example, about outside speaking engagements. Again, pointing out the unique nature of a Supreme Court justice. We want them to go out and talk about the rule of law and have civic engagement, like, for example, Justice Breyer did so well before he retired. So, yes, I mean, you see some distinctions, but again, that's all because of the unique nature of the court. That's also one of the big differences in enforcement. And that's where the sticking point is on this code of conduct.
Speaking of which, there are congressional Democrats who have been pushing this issue who say it doesn't go far enough. For example, here's Dick Durbin of Illinois shortly after the code was announced.
The court's code of conduct sets forth several important canons of conduct, including canons on upholding the integrity and independence of the judiciary and avoiding impropriety and the appearance of impropriety. All of these are important steps, but they fall short of what we could and should expect when a Supreme Court issues a code of conduct.
The buzzwords have been there's no enforcement mechanism, no one to police the 9. Do they have a point, or is it such that you're so supreme as the Supreme Court that you have the right to police yourselves?
Well, that's what the Supreme Court has long argued. And obviously, this has become quite a political issue. There are a lot of Democrats who don't really like the direction of the Supreme Court. And so some of this is attacking the court's legitimacy, undermining some of the decisions that they've handed down. They just don't like them. That's what, conservatives would say. As far as the enforcement goes, though, again, we were talking earlier about the unique nature of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the only court that is created by the Constitution. Right? I mean, it's in the Constitution. The other federal courts, of course, created separately. But the federal court, the Supreme Court, is created by the Constitution, and the Constitution provides a specific enforcement mechanism when justices have misconduct, and that is impeachment. So the argument would be that that's the enforcement mechanism. It's impeachment.
Yeah.
And Congress has no role in adopting a code of conduct, trying to hold the justices accountable, outside committees, because you have significant separation of powers concerns. Congress doesn't have any jurisdiction over the Supreme Court.
We know that Chief Justice John Roberts, throughout his tenure, has been concerned about public perceptions of the court and making sure the American public generally understand what it is they try to do. Do we have any sense now that he might try shopping this around and explaining it to people, or does he hope that Congress and the public just sort of see it and say, that's how it's going to be?
The Chief Justice is someone who is very strategic, and when he makes statements, he does it at judicial conferences or at universities, at law schools. And he may make a comment on he's very satisfied with this. I could see him doing that. But, I could see him letting this speak for itself as well. And I think that they feel very strongly about our point we're talking about with the enforcement mechanism. The chief has suggested that and hinted that. And, the other justices have wanted this. I mean, we saw all summer, I was at a judicial conference in Cleveland, which, by the way, is a fabulous city, where we saw the justice talking about, they thought this was going to be happening soon. Other justices speaking at conferences and law schools saying there was a need for this. So this is something that they all thought was important, and, they're proud of it. I mean, they think this is a good effort, a sincere effort to do something that they believe was important to kind of further that public confidence in the courts and in the Supreme Court specifically.
And real quick, is there a case coming on the docket that would serve as a test of this code of conduct? Because there may be something before one of the 9 justices. Okay.
I mean, you can argue no. I mean, this tracks what they've been doing. There's nothing in this that is going to get them in trouble for some of the other allegations about Justice Thomas or Justice Sotomayor or Justice Alito. I think this is very forward-looking, and that's been a problem, I think, when you talk about some of the, quote, alleged misconduct by some of the justices. That was a long time ago. The rules have changed in the wake of some of that, and so those rules don't apply to behavior retroactively.
All right. CBS News chief legal correspondent and fan of Cleveland, Jan Crawford, thank you for stopping by.